That is the first time in the video that investigators discover that there was, in fact, that gray Jeep with 4 occupants in it, and that Jamal Demons, the defendant, is in the driver's side seat at the back. Recently, new video was released that would soon turn over the whole YNW Melly murder case. Inverted. We're for the first time observing what actually transpired that evening with Melly and Bortlen. However, this is the twist. Someone chose to activate his, when they reach that dead end, dude. Let's dissect it. The 2 best nights friends were killed. October 26, 2018 began on a typical night in Thattrap. Young entrepreneurs toiling away in the studio, pursuing aspirations and avoiding demons. However, at dawn, 2 youthful monarchs would be cold, and there would be one homie sitting in the county. Been charged with 2 murders. This is the true tale of how wealth, celebrity, and street politics transformed fraternity into violence in one of the coldest hip-hop treachery. The YNW team had been close, because they were running about in shorties, Florida's G. Ford, a gritty hood where you either survive or are buried, attempting. YW Demons. Melly Jamal had been exploding with his hit song, Murder in My Thoughts. Additionally, the streets were taking take note. However, all of that achievement was beginning to generate some actual tension between his day ones and himself. YNW and 21-year-old sack chaser Anthony Williams. The 19-year-old juvie Christopher Thomas Jr. had been riding alongside Melly ever since they not much. All of them coming together in the same battle. The beef had been simmering for months, and that was the main focus. Paper. Melly signed to 300 at that time. Amusement for those in the middle July 2018. $200,000 to $500,000 hometown residents felt excluded in the chill. Later, text messages discovered by Sack Chaser is seen by the feds pushing Melly. For his cut, sending a direct text message. You were still eating crumbs? Is it blowing up? Pay, are we finished? Ford was the type of the area where allegiance was betrayal, and everything could get you smoked without hesitation. The YNW from this, a collective had been formed, setting with a connection created through common brutality, poverty, and aspirations of getaway. They had survived the arrest. Together, seen the deaths of friends in the streets and helped one another out, through the arduous process of attempting to succeed in the music business. For years, they functioned as a cohesive team, where one's prosperity was meant to signify everyone's accomplishment. However, the music people are changed by business. Additionally, Melly's quick rise to stardom was causing rifts in partnerships that had appeared indestructible. His Kanye West's cooperation on Mixed. He had been placed on a different, completely level, providing avenues for his childhood pals were unable to navigate alongside him. The way of life that accompanied large-scale label success, pricey chains, foreign vehicles, prominent partnerships were in sharp contrast. To his friends' daily hardships were still in Ford, facing back. The street politicians and their kinship group were likewise growing more and more complex. Being part of the YNW G. Ford Slimes or Bloods, the crew functioned in a hierarchy where resources and respect were shared. According to standing and contribution, Melly's personal achievement was upending these established power structures, generating animosity not only within his close friends and family, but within the larger gang system. The strain between fidelity to childhood pals and devotion to the set was turning into not able to navigate. That deadly the crew was stationed in New Era at night. New Heat is being worked on by recording studios. As the time came to bounce, the CCTV footage captured what seemed to be like another night out with the group. It seems like a good mood. I will be truthful with you. It doesn't appear to no one is type of fighting. No one looked too thrilled. You are aware that if someone sort of got involved, such as say something like, they're not simply strolling as usual, as everyone appears a little relaxed. Yet the street knows that the water is still there, run deep, and behind all of that awesome calm, some lethal tause was going to descend. At 4:08 in the morning, the cameras observed all 4 of the guys plunging from the collaborate in the studio. They're positioning themselves in the gray Jeep they hired. Later, Compass would relate the entire tale of who rode shotgun to their personal grave. The video features Sack Chaser. entering what the streets would refer as the seat of death. I'm Sack Chaser. Where does he obtain in? Excellent. Recall that they stated it was a grave car. He enters into its Juv here. It's Juvia here, I said. Correct. He enters the front right side. In the meanwhile, the cameras captured Melly moving toward the area where prosecutors would thereafter refer to as the ideal posture for the purpose of execution. Directly behind the driver who allowed him to capture both his objectives that slip. Melly arrives and moves to the rear. Traveler. Yes. The DA's office claims that the placement wasn't a coincidence. As they rolled around a few back roads close to Miramar Parkway between 410 and 420, prosecutors claim that Melly began bursting from his left rear position. The everything happened really quickly. No time before his friends even understand what it was taking place. He even blasted through the seat several times, but there wasn't defending wounds to say, stop. Understand me? That's how fast it was. Bang, 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 the bang, that fast. When 8 pictures were taken by Sack Chaser, including deadly blows to the chest, neck, and dome. Juvie was shot 4 times with comparable fatal harm. The autopsy revealed unburned gunpowder stippling on the entrance wounds, indicating that these rounds originated from a point-blank position. Not defensive wounds, thus neither of the victims noticed it. Approaching. Most likely, they believed they were simply traveling with their sibling until the very last moment. The medical examiners' results showed a picture of calculated cruelty that even astonished those who witnessed it murder. Detective Sack Chaser's deadly wound to the head that entered at the rear of escaped through the top of his skull. With sufficient force to expel the passenger window, Juvie was shot in the close-up of the left cheek, with the trajectory of the gunshot indicating that he was, when the shot was fired, facing forward. The angles and locations of the wounds were in line with the 2 victims being utterly ignorant of the danger that lies beneath them. What further escalated the crime? The evident premeditation was horrifying, engaged. The site selection, a remote location without any witnesses or surveillance cameras, recommended cutting-edge preparing. The reality that both victims were repeatedly sprayed with extra the seats were shot through suggested that this wasn't a crime of passion, but with a purposeful approach. The absence of any resistance or protective injuries demonstrated that the gunman had full astonishment on his part. The consequences of the shooting demonstrated the actual extent of the purported plot. The forensic analysis would subsequently reveal that a number of the bullets discovered within the car had been dismissed after the victims had already deceased, implying that the coordination of the crime scene started as soon as the killings. This degree of preparation and execution revealed a criminal who had considered each and every facet of the criminal activity, from the first assault to the cover-up that would ensue. However, the cold-blooded portion followed the corpses. Fell. According to the DA, what transpired next demonstrates that this was not a crime of enthusiasm. This stone was well thought out. Cold killer. Following his smoking, the alleged shooters drove to a house, friends, isolated location where they leaped out and began flinging the whip upward from the outside. They employed an alternative piece to give the impression that someone at random had done a drive-by to plan the shooting, since they think that people are already dead. They leaped out of the vehicle, and they immediately soared up the automobile later, and they think those bullet casings that they discovered there had a caliber of .40. YNW Bortlen arrived at 4:35 a.m. Miramar Memorial Hospital has 2 bodies in the vehicle. Homie was so cool, cucumber, after informing the physicians and officers who were struck during a drive-by. But Melly was a ghost. Supposedly selected up from the location where the phony shooting, heading out of Portland to sell their "yee" and the body's narrative. The smoking gun for the prosecution arrived through social media. Once word spread about the killings, many began asking Melly whether he was doing okay. One homie inquired as to what transpired. Melly's remark, according to the prosecution, was very cold. And Mr. Demens gives a very brief response. That's what I did. I did that in 2 words. That the DA would, the subsequent assertion was nothing less than an acknowledgement of his own day 1 murking. The reason, as reported by the streets and the DA, was that poisonous mixture of funds, gang politics and jealousy that's more crews were destroyed than the feds ever had. Melly's appearance had produced significant issues with the squad's paper. Although his achievements could have raised concerns, the entire system of power in their blood, all four homies were connected to the set. With G-Ford Slimes or YNW Bloods. And when loyalty and bread begin to conflict in the hood, someone typically finds themselves in a box. What is most up is how these were pretty tight. Melly had their names actually inked on. His face when they were still breathing, demonstrating to the outside world that these were his brothers who rode or died. These weren't some street or random ops competitors. These were friends from childhood who emerged together in the same conflict, dreamed of leaving the neighborhood together. Via musical performance, and shared each other's goes back through every cheer. Even the bodies weren't cold when investigators discovered that this wasn't just another hood past. The proof that they were going to reveal would reveal the sophisticated cover-up nearly succeeded, and demonstrate the extent to which a person will go to get rid of those who knew them best. The inquiry that revealed everything. What began as a custom. The inquiry into the hood shooting became among the most intricate forensic cases the state had ever witnessed. The proof that were discovered might show some criminal mastermind of the highest kind. A concealment so intricate that it nearly had the entire system was duped. As soon as Miramar. When PD arrived at the hospital, they shut down the Jeep and began questioning Bortlen about what transpired. His tale was a classic street A. They were returning to the crib after the studio when a few unidentified shooters got up and began to relax. However, when the investigators went to confirm his story, they discovered something that had scratching their brains. Additionally, they stroll side by side while sitting, for a mile-long span of an hour, seeking proof of this drive-by, since evidence is what remains of a crime departs from. Additionally, in this instance, the absence of proof is crucial. The investigator ended the entire Miramar Parkway segment starting at 160th to 172nd Street, making the journey strip for 1 hour in search of any traces. Of the purported shooting, they appeared vacant. No shattered shell casings glass, no skid marks, no bullets. When they broadened their search to include another mile, same outcome. This was incredibly weird. In light of the Jeep had 16 bullet holes in it. Broke the rear glass and 2 shots were fired outside. Windows, the absence of tangible proof at the suspected scene of the crime was more than simply suspicious. It was almost if Bortlen's story was accurate, it would be impossible. Drive-by shootings, particularly those that leave if there is this much firing. Behind a vast trail of proof, shells from the assailant's firearms and pieces of glass from the shot-out windows, bullets striking adjacent structures or automobiles, tire imprints from quick speeding or evasive actions. There was none of it. For investigators who had handled hundreds of situations like this was a serious warning sign. What caused the lack of evidence is perhaps more revealing. Was the Jeep severely damaged itself? With 16 easily recognized bullet holes, including impacts that broke several windows and entered the body of the car, the volume of gunfire should have left noticeable traces at the location. Some rounds' trajectory indicated they were fully through the vehicle. Therefore, they ought to have collided the road, guardrails, or the area around vegetation. However, no such proof was located. Crime's systematic search technicians at the spot disclosed another important information: the glass's design. Distribution in the vicinity of the reported shooting, the position did not align with a highway. Assault. When windows are thrown out when a moving car shoots, the glass usually, pieces disperse in a particular pattern according to the direction of impact angle and of travel. The absence of any glass pieces at all at the specified position indicated the somewhere another. Windows had been shot out, completely. The discovery was made when investigators made the decision to go backwards. Similar to actual detectives, they located the crew's transition to a new age recording studios and learned about there were cameras all over the place. What they found on the video entirely, the script was reversed. That is the first time in the video that investigators discovered that that gray Jeep actually had 4 persons, and that Jamal Demens, the defendant, is in the driver's side seat in the back. Melly was never described by Bortlen as within the whip. The police now understand that they had a victim go missing who ought to have, additionally, unless he wasn't shot up, not really a victim. The monitoring film showed a number of other contradictions in Bortlen's story. The group's departure was indicated by the timestamp 3:19 a.m. in the studio, not the earlier, at first, time had claimed. Crucially, the cameras recorded all 4 of the men's informal, laid-back manner as they left the structure. There was no sign of conflict, tension, or worry about their security. Actions that would be anticipated if they thought they were being pursued or singled out for aggression. The cameras inside the studio additionally offered vital background information regarding the activities of the group that evening. Video displayed the 4 men collaborating on music that doesn't seem to be in contradiction or dispute. Their expressions and interactions seemed typical throughout the session, defying all theories that the level of tension had reached a of aggression. This proof would subsequently be essential in refuting assertions that the murders occurred as a result of an unplanned dispute or conflict. Maybe the majority detrimental to Bortlen's reputation was his neglect to bring up Melly's presence in the car throughout his preliminary police interviews. This wasn't a small mistake. It was the essential omission that implied intentional deception. Investigators came to the conclusion that Bortlen was lying regarding who was in the vehicle. He might be lying about the other things that occurred that evening. The inquiry then became high-tech, such as a cell phone. Information would provide investigators with an unprecedented examination of each action and communication amongst all parties. The digital trail these crimes left behind would prove to be more harmful. Greater than any testimony from witnesses, because at that place is the location of Christopher's cell phones, Jamal, Thomas, and Anthony Williams. At 4:02 a.m., the men all form a line. Following that, Mr. Demens' phone follows the 2 victims until around 4:20. The data from the cell tower revealed all Melly's, Sack Chaser's, 3 phones, and Juvie's were in the same isolated area. At 4:02 a.m., close to US 27 and Penrook Road, right as the murder purportedly went down. 18 minutes before 4:20 a.m., every phone moved in unison. Next, Melly's phone disconnected as the others made their way to the hospital. The accuracy of the tracking of a cell phone information gave researchers a reenactment, minute by minute, of the movements of the gang that evening. The telephone displayed the cars moving in unison, traversing Interstate 595 before splitting off near the Miramar Parkway intersection and 184th Street, although one car proceeded to the gated community of Sunset Lakes neighborhood where a few co-workers resided. The other went north in the direction of locations that are getting farther away. The electronic evidence showed something far more advanced. Sack Chaser and Melly were used the identical brand and model of phone with the same plan. This enabled investigators to follow their actions concurrent with the extraordinary precision. Both phones were displayed in the data, journeying together to the distant where the alleged murders took place happened, staying there for the crucial time frame, followed by separation with a single phone en route back to civilization, while the other one persisted to the medical facility. More than just place. The phone's data showed important health and details on the activity. Melly's step counts recorded by the phone revealed the recording studio has 70 stairs. At 4:02 a.m., an additional 70 steps, the suspected murder period, followed by 1,397 steps from 4:42 to 453 in the morning. This digital footprint indicated important physical activities throughout the period, while he was purportedly planning to be retrieved at the site of the crime. The evidence from ballistics showed an even improved image of the configuration. Within, the investigators discovered a spent shell in a Jeep. Casings, demonstrating that bullets were fired from inside the car entirely. The drive-by tail is destroyed. Additional, at that distance, proof would emerge. Place identified by the cell data. What makes that significant? It demonstrates that a firearm was fired inside of that vehicle. At that remote location, which was determined by the investigators, discovered that the phone tracking 8 more A40 bullet casings caliber firearm. The breakdown of ballistics showed two distinct shootings incidents. The internal images that killed the victims as well as the outside later. Shots were fired to stage the phony pass-by. The forensic examination of the shell casings provided important information regarding the order of events. The casings discovered within the car were from a weapon of a different caliber than those discovered at the distant staging place. This implied that the criminals had utilized several weapons. They had sufficiently planned the crime to sophistication in an effort to perplex the ballistics proof. Analysis of trajectory of the bullet trails inside the car verified that the deadly bullets had been fired from within the vehicle, in particular from the left-hand passenger seat in the back, where Melly was seen in CCTV footage seated. The angles and places of entry were consistent with someone being fired. Across the car in the direction of the front passenger seat, as well as the right rear passenger seat. The accuracy of these shots, in addition to the absence of defensive injuries sustained by the victims, indicated that the death